Hello, everyone. This is Eric B. Horn, VP of Branding and Communication for NAAA HR, and welcome to another episode of the Voice of HR podcast. This podcast was designed to give you the tools, tips, and strategies that you need to navigate as an African American in human resources. And today it's all about leadership. When it comes to the concept of leadership, you have people that they act like leaders and then they're not, or they're so afraid to step out and become a leader, knowing that they have these overall traits. And today's guest, which I'm very excited about, is Kimberly Harris-Mooring. So before we even get started, let me give a brief description. She's a highlighted experienced human resource leader providing strategic leadership to management and solving complex issues around engagement, performance, and organizational development. She is currently the Chief Administrative Officer at the Cook County Assessor's Office, where she provides strategic guidance to senior leadership as well oversees HR operations, budget, compliance, and training. Ooh, you have your hands full. Kimberly holds an MBA with an HR concentration, and she is also serves on the board of Chicago SHRM, which is the largest local affiliate chapter of SHRM. Kimberly, welcome to the Voice of HR podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
I am wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Once again, it's all about leadership, and I firmly believe everyone is a leader in some way, shape, or form. But the key thing is bringing that leadership out and bringing it out at the right times, right? Because most people say when it comes from a job perspective, they don't actually leave the job. They leave the manager or the person that's supposed to be leading them, which is a very blunt but strong statement. And everyone isn't a leader, even if they're in leadership positions. So with you being a leader and juggling so much in your career, this will be a great conversation because you are a well-rounded HR leader. So let's jump right into it. So can you talk about what effective leadership looks like, and more importantly, what that means to you?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Eric, for having me. I'm very excited about this. And for me, effective leadership is really when you're able to get things done by motivating and coaching and allowing others to thrive. And at the same time, you are working toward a common goal, which is whatever that strategic objective is. I think it's about building trust. It's about building relationships and recognizing your team. In my opinion, trust and integrity are like the key ingredients in the recipe, if you will, for being an effective leader. And the other thing that I will say is a high level of emotional intelligence is a must. When you have awareness of yourself, when you have self-management, when you can, control your behaviors, I think you're better equipped to manage, and you're better equipped to work with people, and as a person or as a leader, and also build authentic relationships.
Okay, and that's kind of great that you talk about that when you say you have knowledge of self, because you have to know yourself to lead others in a sense. Even though leadership isn't about the person leading, it's about that person leading other individuals. But having a huge level of emotional intelligence is lacking when it comes to leaderships or the overall quality of what a leadership is. But based off of that, how would you describe your leadership style?
Well, my leadership style, I'm more of a visionary, and I'm more of a coaching type leader. And let me explain that a little bit. I care very deeply about my employees, and I know that I need the best version of them in order to get things done, right? We have a lot of projects and a lot of things that we are charged with. And so I listen. I am one that shows empathy. I am a big collaborator, because the one thing I have learned is that the employees that are closest to the business, they have great ideas. And sometimes leaders are so focused on what they think that they do not take time to listen to what the employees who are in the thick of it think, right? And so I tend to be more collaborative. I seek their opinions. And I'm able to get more buy-in when I do that as well. Um, they have a voice, and if I can empower them to speak with that voice, then I do. And I generally have high performing teams as a result of that. I sort of paint the picture or the vision of where we need to go, and then I empower them to execute.
See, that's great. And the key takeaway for me based off of that is the overall buy-in. That's the biggest piece. And with you leading, with you caring for your employees, they're just not a number or just an individual to get the work done. You are vested in them, and that shows a huge level of, I can never pronounce this word, but reciprocity. I hope I said it the right way. You know, you pour into them and they pour into you, and it seems like it's creating an overall family environment where you care for the individuals and bond together, and you can get more work done, which is great. So,
exactly.
Oh, please go ahead if you want to add.
I was just going to say, you are absolutely right. It is a two-way street. And leaders that recognize that are apt to get a lot more accomplished because everyone is working toward that common goal.
Yeah, that's a key takeaway for anyone who's struggling to be a leader right then and there. So when it comes to mentorship and leadership, a lot of times people say it has to gel together. Other people strictly keep it separate for whatever reason. But based off of your opinion, how do you think mentorship and leadership, how do you think both of those connect with each other?
Well, actually, good leaders become mentors by default. Because think about it for a minute. Generally, if you have a leader that you trust, a leader that you admire and respect, you're going to automatically learn from them, whether it's directly or indirectly, because guess what? Leaders are always on. Leaders are always being watched. Sometimes it's not, what you say, it's what you do, right? And so we have to set the example as leaders. And I think that, yes, formally, there are mentorships. A lot of organizations create mentorships. They match their high potential employees with, a leader and things of that nature. But leaders should never, ever forget that they're always being watched. And they actually, in my opinion, we become mentors whether we want to or not. But I do think that when there is an opportunity to become a mentor, it is so important. It's an awesome way to be able to give back, to share what I call nuggets of knowledge, with others that are coming up. It's ways to help others not make the same mistake that we made, and I'm sure, we're all, none of us are perfect, and we all, in fact, need to make mistakes to become better, to become stronger, correct? But at the same time, we certainly can learn from others and not make some of the same mistakes that they've made. And so mentors can share these different things and help you to navigate. And I think it's a gift in a mentee's life to be able to, to have an opportunity to be mentored. But it connects.
Well, you are dropping nuggets of knowledge right now. And it's key because that just shows that you're transparent when it comes to your overall leadership, right? employees know that their bosses are not perfect, but I think people, when it comes to leadership, sometimes feel like they have to be, being on piece makes a lot of sense, but the perfect piece. I've had some of my best bosses say, well, I really don't know what the answer is, but let's just figure it out together.
Exactly.
That,
Yeah.
that
Yep.
will put you in a place where, one, the person is transparent, but even more importantly, they're willing to go there with you to figure out the overall answer, which is that's a piece of leadership that you can't pick up from a book. That shows this high, once again, that emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence. Yes, that's building that trust.
Yep. So
Can I'm sorry, Eric. Is it okay if I add something quick here?
yeah, go ahead.
So, to your point about, well, I really don't know the answer. Let's figure it out together. I've had leaders who have said, okay, well, Kim, what do you think? And they'll hear me out and say, okay, well, let's try that because it just may work. To your point again, Kim, earlier about figuring things out and knowing that your people who are on the ground, they actually are in the trenches of things and they have good ideas, which could take the department or the organization to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Great. So let's switch gears and talk about HR as an industry, right? So in your opinion, what do you think the influence of the role of HR has changed over the years? And what does the future of HR look like to you?
Wow, let me tell you, in my opinion, HR has changed dramatically. Back in the day, it was referred to as the personnel department.
Yep.
Yes, if you've been out there long enough, you will yes, I recall that. And the personnel department was very administrative. It was very tactical, right? But in this day and age, HR has become much more strategic, has become much more purposeful, and it had to make that transition. It had to evolve, if you will. HR is aligning with the business in order to understand, in order to make sure that HR practices and functions align with the business, right? Because at the end of the day, now HR has become more business partners, okay? And there's a gentleman, David Ulrich, who is a professor for the University of Michigan. He has been such a force, such a catalyst in pushing and teaching HR professionals to sort of, get us out of that comfort zone of being just order takers. And so what has happened is, even if you look at the HR profession and the certification, it is becoming a recognized preferred qualification. When you look at job postings now, they're saying that they prefer an HR certification. In the past, it was not always like that, but organizations understand now that if you discipline yourself and you take the time to level up on your competencies, on your skills, it's very much like I equate it to someone who's in accounting that gets a CPA. When you're talking to a CPA, you feel a certain comfort level in that they, know how to navigate through that space, right? Well, HR has worked really, really hard, and we've tried hard to just elevate the HR professional overall. And so that certification has become very, very important in the HR community.
And the biggest piece that you said about that was being outside of just the order takers, meaning the function of HR, it drives and helps the business's bottom line to a certain extent, as opposed to just, okay, I need to fire someone. How are we going to protect ourselves just in case X, Y, and Z? So it brings a lot more to the table than just what people thought of in the past. And I think even when it comes to the combination of having chief human resource officers at that executive level in those conversations to drive more of the functions of HR that can help out the overall business, which is key. And it's a key strategy from what you're telling me is going to even be a greater entity or a greater asset moving forward, which is great.
Absolutely. And HR will continue to evolve and embrace change and technology, because sometimes HR is pulling up the rear, you know, when it comes to some of the technology. They want to sort of hold on, right? But as we begin to see how fast technology is changing, HR must be prepared to meet the needs of the multi-generational workforce. And so, you know, as an example, if you want to look at your pay stub or your pay statement, you know, there's a group of people who would like to be able to pull that up on their mobile device and see that, you know, versus someone that may want to just pull it up on, you know, their computer or have it printed out, you know, at work. So the point is that HR has to think about new innovative ways to be able to connect with the workforce as well, and to keep them engaged. And so I think moving forward that there needs to be, you know, more concentration on how can we automate some of the HR functions, right? Some of the redundant functions. How do we automate that so we can spend more time with our people?
So when it comes to the concept of managers versus leaders, this is like, in my opinion, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? You know, sometimes people say in order for you to be a manager, you have to be a leader. And some people say, well, I'm not a manager and I lead in my particular area. In your opinion, what is the difference between the two and how do both relate?
So there is a difference between the two. And I believe that you transform or evolve from one to the other. Generally, as managers, you are focused on the day-to-day task. You're focused on processes. You're focused on making sure that rules are being followed, making sure that the SOPs, the standard operating procedures are being done. Managers are the individuals that help to execute the vision, if you will. And I think that that's a very, very important role. But as important are the roles of leaders who communicate that vision. They're the ones that are articulating what the current state of affairs that we're in, what does the future look like, what is that future state, and then how do we get there? And so I think they both work hand in hand. They just have different functions, but at the end of the day, it's really the same outcome. And that is whatever those, you know, strategic objectives are for that department, whatever projects they have to complete, they have different functions, they have different paths, but then they all come to the fork in the road. And so I think that the transition generally is that managers end up transforming over to become leaders because the mindset begins to shift. So you shift from having that manager mindset to having the leader mindset. And what that requires, many times reflection, and it requires for you to step back. When you are in the thick of it and your head is down, and your sleeves are rolled up, which managers find themselves, you know, because you're in the trenches as well, many, many times. If a leader is able to come out of those trenches so that they can take a step back and holistically see what's going on, holistically look around and ask questions and challenge. And that's where you begin to, you know, see that difference between being a manager, managing those processes day to day, and being a leader that has to be more visionary and has to learn how to inspire people to get things done.
Okay. And that's a great segue for the next question, because a lot of people have the misconception that leadership is, they just look at the good parts of leadership, you know, the notoriety that this person is the leader or they're leading these group of people. But, you know, your leadership is truly tested when there's a crisis and when things are blowing up all around you, right? And with everything that has been going on with the world for the past year with this overall pandemic, leaders have been tested through and through, whether it's from the government perspective, whether it's from business perspectives, or even just being a leader in your household, right? But in your opinion, can you talk about how different leaderships have been showing up in the midst of this pandemic?
Oh boy, it has been and continues to be very complex, very difficult. This has been the most unprecedented time in a leader's life, probably in a very, very long time. I mean, we've had other, crises that were presented, but I think that there were so many just multiple factors that were occurring that were beyond a leader's control. Now, there's a key: beyond the leader's control. And I think that it's been difficult, but it's also been very revealing and very surprising at the same time. Leaders had to learn how to navigate. They had to learn how to make quick decisions, and those decisions were based on uncertainty. No one knew anything about this virus. I mean, so everyone is learning, and the safety and the well-being of the staff skyrocketed. I mean, that became top priority at that moment, because this was such a medical, emergency. And so I think that not only the safety and well-being of your staff, your teams, but imagine that this leader is also thinking about their own safety and the safety of their families. And so making these decisions, we have to shut down. We have to, we have to transition to a remote environment. I think that many of us had to really walk by faith and not by sight, because we could not see the future, right? We had no idea. This was also a time where leaders were forced to think very creatively, and they had to trust blindly. We now had to send employees, if they were able to do this, we had to send employees out to work remotely. There may not have been a clock in and a clock out feature, right? So there's this trust that had to be, that had to exist in order to continue to get work done. I can guarantee you some leaders were probably, a bit nervous about that. But I also think that a lot of leaders are very, very proud of their teams. You know why? Because the teams showed up and they showed out, and they were able to help keep things going. There's certain industries that didn't have that opportunity. Some of them, had to shut down. They had to make very difficult decisions of furloughing or laying off and things of that nature. So there was so much that was going on. So I do think that leaders, we were talking about it earlier, but your personal life and your professional life collided, because now all of the Zoom calls and the go-to meetings and the pet is in the background, the kids are in the background because you're homeschooling, right? So, wow, you have leaders that so the whole, the etiquette or protocol of business was like out the window. And so I think, we really had to stretch our agility muscles. We had to stretch our empathy muscles and be more flexible. But again, I think that, employees, they did it. They surprised in some cases and just validated in other cases that, we just needed to put our heads together. IT had to figure out how we were going to hook up and, did you have the bandwidth? Did you have internet? There was just so much.
It seems like to your point, it increased the level of empathy. Mm-hmm. And it also touched on we're all in this together. And that wasn't just a tagline to say to keep people's spirits up. That was what was really going on, where the road was a little rough, the waters were muddy, but it was one of those situations where, I don't know what the end result is going to be, but every day we'll move in the right direction to get past what's going on. And that you had leaders and managers who really didn't care that much about the employees start to, showcase that empathy, because if they would have the employee would have gotten sick, it wasn't just a mentality of, well, better you than me, because this was something, it still is, what's the word? A pandemic or a virus that can attack anyone at any given point. So it evens the playing field, whether you are the CEO or the entry level professional, when it comes to, okay, we all got to survive and get through this, because it's bigger than just the livelihood of the company. It's survival at this point, which is very.
That's right. That's right. We are all in the same boat.
Yep.
We were all in the same boat, and more importantly, we all actually needed to rely on one another. And we still do. Like, everyone has a responsibility to do, what they need to do to protect themselves, but also to protect others. And so, and to your point, yeah, that was a situation where it didn't matter what level you were not immune to what could possibly happen. So,
So the next question, I love this one. I should have started out with this question, because I love to see people's faces light up. So, what do you love most about HR?
Let me just tell you, I take my role very, very seriously. And I love that no matter the situation, there are times when you're delivering good news. There are times when you're delivering not so good news. But at the end of the day, the people really are the heartbeat. The people in the organization are the special sauce that makes that organization thrive. And I understand the levity of the position that I hold, because in HR, you touch everyone's life. In some way, shape, or form, you are touching their life, and you are impacting their life and indirectly their family's life, right? You watch, in many cases where I've had an opportunity to watch a young person come in, we had an internship. I watched this intern come in as an intern in school, and then graduated college, and then actually came back to work for the organization, right? And just watch this person grow and take on more responsibilities and do things. And, some 6-7 years, down the line, we're having a conversation about how when they first came in as a scared intern that was, going to work on a website for us, and now they were like a manager of IT, so those are the things that are rewarding to me. If I can help an employee who's having a hard time, Maybe they're going through one of their valleys, because we all have valleys in the workplace every now and then, right? But when I can work with an employee and talk them through different things, and then they go away and they do it and they come back in a couple of weeks and say, Kimberly, thank you so much. You know, I did this, I took your advice on that, or, you know, those are the things that are very rewarding to me. I try to create an environment where people can grow, they can feel included, and they can feel valued and be productive. So that's why I like HR, even though sometimes it's really, really hard. Boy, but those moments when the reward comes in, it makes me smile.
And that shows that it's coming from a special place, right? Because as soon as I asked that question, you took a second to think about it, you started to light up, which is a good thing, because you are the best person for these type of leadership positions, right? You are the model of that, because you look at things from all angles. Now, don't get me wrong, as a leader, your job is to move the company or move the organization in the right direction. So there is a significant amount of work, but you gracefully balance both, where people will want to work with you. They rally around you because you know when those valleys that you talked about before comes about, you're there in the trenches with them, as opposed to just, okay, you guys have to figure it out for yourself. That is probably one of the biggest ways to disconnect or disengage with the people that you are leading, if you aren't in the trenches with them. Just don't be there when you're celebrating the highs, but be there even more when you are in the lows, to get yourself back up to the highs again.
That's
so that
right.
makes a lot of sense. So the last question, because when it comes to growth and development, because I'm a clear advocate on, you know, not only having the knowledge is power, but utilizing that knowledge is just as powerful. So based off of that, what books or training would you recommend to a young HR leader?
This was such a difficult question, actually, for me, because I read quite a bit, and I read a lot of self-help, you know, type books and a lot of leadership books. And so I had to try to narrow down and figure out, you know, what to recommend for my young emerging leaders. And I came up with a couple things. So first of all, I think that any type of training or books on emotional intelligence is a must. And I think back, if I knew these type of things when I first started out as a leader, just wow, just where I would be. So I would definitely encourage young leaders and seasoned leaders. It is never too late to pick up some of those nuggets of knowledge on how to just be more effective, because emotional intelligence works in your personal life as well as your professional life, because how you behave and how you respond to other people's behavior, how you socialize with people, it's part of life. So that's one. I think that if you are a new HR leader, there's an excellent read. It's by a gentleman by the name of Alan Collins, and he wrote a book called The New HR Leader's First 100 Days. If you're a new leader, it is an excellent read. Also, if not, if you're in a point where you want to revitalize yourself, you want to reinvent yourself, you want to get some new ideas as it relates to HR, you could certainly read that book. Some very good tidbits in there. And then lastly, I'll say Marshall Goldsmith, who is a leadership guru, he wrote a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And let me tell you, after so many years of climbing and, and getting to a certain level. And as you get to these different levels, you have to understand that we must continue to change. We have to continue to evolve, not only as leaders, but as people, right? And we have to never become too comfortable or too complacent. Whatever it took to get you to that next level, it's going to take something different. It's going to take something more to get you to that next level, if you so choose to make that move. So that's also a good inspiring read.
This is a great interview. So we talked about a lot. We talked about what leadership looks like and what it means to you, the difference between managers and leaders, what you truly love about HR. So we covered a lot during this podcast interview, which is great. Did you have any last thoughts or comments for our audience before we depart?
The last thing that I will leave with everyone is learn to be a purposeful leader. Treat everyone with dignity, with respect. Several years ago, I read this book that was called How Full is Your Bucket? And this book explained that there are, from the time you set your foot on the floor in the morning, we have all these interactions with different people all throughout the day. Sometimes it's thousands of interactions, little interactions, like you drop your clothes off at the cleaners, you go get on the train, you go to Starbucks and pick up your coffee. You come in contact with people all throughout the day. And the premise behind this was whether we deposit into the lives of others or do you make withdrawals? In other words, was there a positive interaction or was it a negative? Did you smile? Did you say good morning when you walked into the office? Were you looking kind of grumpy? And I think as leaders, we have to understand that we touch and we interact with so many lives every day. And I would challenge you to intentionally make more deposits than withdrawals in the lives of others. And if you do that, you will find that your life will be more rewarding and that your bucket would be filled. I thank you very much for this time.
So based off of this podcast episode, I'm officially changing the name of the podcast to Kimberly's Nuggets of Knowledge. So, but on behalf of myself and NAAA HR Chicago, I wanted to say thank you for taking the time, effort, and energy out of your day to talk more about leadership. And I'm pretty sure that everyone that you lead, they're very lucky for you to be in that leadership position, because once again, you care so much about your employees, you care about their well-being, and all of that at the end of the day helps out the achieving the bottom line when it comes to someone's organization. So thank you for being you. Thank you for just showing up and being the leader and continuing to want to be the best leader that you can possibly be. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.